हाय एवरीवन, वेलकम बैक टू चलचित्र टॉक्स। मेरा नाम ध्रुव है और इस हफ्ते के रिकमेंडेशन में आई वांट टू टॉक टू यू ऑल अबाउट एरिक वाइनस्टाइन्स पॉडकास्ट द पोर्टल. In my last week's recommendation, I talked about the Lex Friedman podcast with his guest Dr. Michio Kaku, and a lot of you in the comment section also requested me to cover Eric Weinstein's interview. Well, I decided to go ahead with that, and the episode that I'm going to be discussing in this week's recommendation is one of the most intellectually stimulating podcasts that I have ever listened to. The episode that I want to discuss in this week's recommendation is the one with his guest Garrett Lacey. So let me give you a bit of a context about both Eric Weinstein and Garrett Lacey. So Eric Weinstein is this all-knowing genius. Like, he is the complete manifestation of who you would call as, like the intellectual heavyweight. He is a Harvard graduate in math and has been running an investment firm since 2015 for Peter Thiel. And this guy also runs this podcast known as The Portal, which is nothing like anything you guys have ever listened to. And it's really one of those rare podcasts wherein you genuinely go deep into the subject matter, and most of the times there are things which just completely go on the top of my head, but I still do really enjoy listening to the podcast and the entire learning experience that I get out of it. Now, talking about Garrett Lacey is a physicist. He's a theoretical physicist who is trying to unify the theory of everything. This is something which has been a very, very long conversation and a topic of discussion and an area of research wherein the physicists are trying to combine the relativity theory put out by Einstein and the quantum theory which was put out by Bohr into a single unified theory. Garrett is a very oddball in that sense, wherein he does not come from the lineage of people who are working on the conventional ways of proving the theory. And he has some very interesting take on what it all can be about. So this is not your usual podcast episode wherein you have a guest and the podcaster is interviewing the guest. This is basically two scientists sitting down. Oh, and by the way, Eric Weinstein considers Garrett Lacey as his arch nemesis, and they have this long-standing rivalry of sorts, and this is sort of their face-off episode. And overall, the episode gives us a very good peek into how the mind of a scientist works, and how many possibilities they have to consider, and there is no room for the normal chit chat, or there is no room for just light conversations. It's just either you prove me wrong or you get proven wrong. I'm going to be dividing this section into the what, why, and how. Starting off with the what. So the premise of the discussion goes something like there are two distinct theories which are universally accepted by everyone, which explain everything that happens in our universe at a particle level. So one was the theory of relativity, which was put forth by Dr. Albert Einstein in 1908 in his paper, and that sort of explains the world on the physical level, on the macro level. On the other hand, there is the quantum theory which was put forth by Niels Bohr, which deals with things at the micro level, at the electron and the sub-electron level. The problem arises when you try to combine these two theories into a single unified theory of everything. You see, the problem occurs when the particles from that macro level, as suggested by Dr. Albert Einstein, go in the quantum world. They completely lose their way and they don't actually behave at all how they're supposed to behave. So the general theory of relativity sort of fails when it goes into the quantum world. And this has been a very long-standing problem for physicists to figure out. If you have to come up with a unified theory of everything, how did life begin, how did this universe came into existence, you need to completely combine and present a unified theory of everything. And what really followed was that the theory which was put forth by Einstein was so well accepted and well revered that no one really went into that direction and researched a little bit more about it. However, since the quantum theory and the quantum field in itself was a relatively newer concept and there was so much more to be discovered, a lot of research and intellectual minds went into the quantum field. And from that research and intellectual capital that went into understanding the quantum field arose string theory, which until now is the most commonly sort of accepted theory about how everything came into being. So string theory on a very basic level says that the universe is comprised of different strings which are dealt with different forces. You have four basic forces: the electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, and gravity. So it says that the entire universe is basically a web of these four forces, and the particles from the the Einstein's theory of relativity interact with these waves to kind of shape our world. However, in recent times there have been a lot of doubts and questions about the validity of this theory, and it's sort of at a stage wherein no one is really sure that string theory is the real deal. Now, talking about the why aspect of it. So like I told you that all of this research into combining the two theories started out in the 1980s, and we had all of these great physicists coming in from the best institutions in the world, trying to figure it out. What really happened is that anyone who was outside of that club who wanted to work on something other than string theory was kind of shunned out by the scientific community, and no one gave them due credit and no one wanted to hear them out. And they were always focused on string theory, and they were obsessed by the fact that this is going to be the one to solve the mystery and everything. So this is sort of where Garrett Leacy's curiosity and his kind of dedication to kind of crack this from a different angle came about. So Garrett Leacy is a very different physicist than your usual kind, in the sense that he is not associated with any institution. He does not sit with all of these giants who are trying to figure out the answers to the universe. He's a guy who found some very fundamental issues with how the string theory was working, and no one around him was ready to give him the answers. However, we need to understand that in order for us to know who we really are, we need the answers to these questions. And a very interesting point that Eric also made in this podcast is that once and if we have that unified theory of everything, it will be the thing which will best substitute for religion in our culture. Right now we see everything has been wardened off to religion and religious actions and act of God, so to say. And you don't have any better answer, so the only answer that you resort to is that God has the answers and you are not supposed to question everything. So it's very important for those people who come from a scientific bent of mind and who question everything, that if this theory comes to life and if it's able to prove the existence of the universe, then it is going to be the best substitute to religion that we have, and that's going to mean so much for our civilization's growth. Now, if we talk about the how part of it and what Garrett Leacy's opinion about this entire thing is, it's really high level. However, I'm just going to try and give you a little hint of what he's trying to get at. And the rest you can sort of try to figure out and let me know if anyone has a better idea than I do. So there is a mathematical structure which is called as the E8 lattice. The E8 lattice is actually known to be the most complex mathematical structure ever in existence. So it's basically a 248th dimensional mathematical object. The interesting part about it is that as per all of the mathematical calculations and after all of the theoretical research, this E8 lattice actually exists in nature as a physical entity. So all of the calculations point to the fact that this is a real particle. And what Garrett Leacy's entire unified theory of everything is based upon is this E8 lattice. he is trying to place all of the particles and all of the quantum subject fields into this E8 lattice to make a unified theory of everything. And it feels like a very rogue and a very arbit thing to sort of grasp onto, that how can you map the entire universe on an E8 lattice. However, this is what he believes, and if you listen to the discussion in this podcast episode as well as some other videos on the E8 lattice which are out there, there is some merit to it. And during the course of the discussion in this episode as well, you can see Eric changing his stance from completely dismissing him to being defensive, to ultimately showing a little bit of concern that, okay, I do see merit in what you're trying to do. However, how are we going to do it? So we see that sort of spark arise that, we are actually onto something here. And that's really something that excites me as an individual, and I'm hoping that it excites you as well. And this was my recommendation to you all for this week. Please do let me know if you do end up liking this episode in the comment section down below. And if you do end up liking the episode as well as the podcast, please hit the likes button. It really helps us. This is it from me for this week, guys. I will be back next week with more recommendations like these. Till then, take care, be safe, and bye-bye.